It's a lazy excuse on us poor planning.
Don't leave the church now. This is not what I'm saying.
Yeah, you want more, but you're not stewarding what you have well.
God doesn't want people to make a lot of money.
That's crazy. Where's the dollar? Where's the transparency? Where's the goal? Where are we headed?
Tension between church and finances.
Don't not box God in. Don't feel shame. Don't be afraid.
Like, hey, I'm quietly struggling financially. What would you say is your word of encouragement and practical advice for them?
I think.
Welcome back to the channel. I'm Cameron Rice, CEO and founder of the Earners Academy and Mission 310. And today we're talking about a topic that a lot of people ask about and normally are not in the same vein. Today we're actually going to be talking about a certain group of people that give their entire lives to families, to people, leading communities, and making sure that they are taken care of. But oftentimes we're going to pull back the curtain today on what the finance looks like in the church world. Yes, church. Most of the time when you hear church and money, they normally are not in the same sentence. But today we're going to be talking about that and what happens behind the scenes with pastors, what happens behind the scenes with families in the church, and talking about maybe some tea. But today we got a special guest. He is the birthday, actually, because his birthday just passed at the time of this recording. Today, we are sitting down with Executive Pastor, a.k.a. Robin, Tim Reyes, to have the conversation that church rarely has out loud, and that's faith and finance. Tim Reyes is passionate about people experiencing God, discovering purpose, growing as leaders, with nearly 2 decades of ministry experience in discipleship, leadership development, church growth, and pastoral ministry. Tim shares practical teaching and real-life insights on faith, family, leadership, personal growth, and alongside his wife, Candace, he is committed to building healthy leaders in a thriving local church while raising 4 incredible children. Welcome to the channel, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey.
Glad to be here.
You were the birthday?
I was the birthday.
Hey,
It's
yeah.
like it happened.
Yeah.
It's passed.
You're still the birthday for
Okay,
me.
I'll be the birthday.
It's the birthday for the week.
I'll be the birthday. Let's go.
So I want to jump right into it. So
Yeah.
obviously we've known each other for quite some time. You lead very well. I want to start with this. So from your experience working with people, let's say on a ground level as leading at different churches, you're at different places, you've been all over the place. You know a lot of different pastors. What would you say are things that you hear are like most common in the church world, as I say, not specifically at your church, but what are the most common financial things that you see in ministry? Whether that's in the church as members or even people who may be working in it or conversations they may have.
No, I think it's a really like broad, right? From members that you're leading and pastoring and helping, which is like things that we do with like Mission 310 and Earners. It's why it's so special, right? Because you're helping people find money when they haven't stewarded money well.
Big word in
I
the
think
church world.
that's a word that we use often, right? And it's one that like there are clear guidelines in the Bible on being a steward, being generous, right? Giving. And so I think like that's probably one of the ones that is probably the easiest to hit, identify. I think if you're talking staffs, I think that's a way bigger conversation. You know, I think that the term mega church, right, like that we use is a church with, 200 plus members, 500 plus members, 1,000 plus members, depending on like how you quantify it. But then you're talking about larger staffs, payroll, buildings, like so. Like I think the probably what I would say is like the misconception of church is like right, it is the church. And then it is an organization, right? And so I think that's where things kind of get like, oh no, we want transparency and where's our money going and what's this doing? And, and I think I'm here for all those measures. I think that's probably the one thing I see that gets, I guess, sticky. And I think that's what makes today's conversation interesting. And it's why you're like, man, when we talk faith and we talk finances and we talk church world and payroll and staff and all those things, what does that look like when we have some clear commands to how to steward money in the Bible? So
And I think what always is so funny about, what you were mentioning, how we work with other churches, I think people think those have to be separate, like faith and finance, or like, oh, well, everybody wants a great service, right? And I'm always telling people, hey guys, I know that this is a church, but those things require money.
They cost.
You want nice production lights?
It costs.
I know that the Lord loves to give and, he's going to, but we still have to make sure that we pay for those things, right? So microphones are not cheap, all those things are important. And so I think when people think that they're like disassociated or it's like, well, hey, I get this all the time. It's like, well, I just don't understand like why I need to tithe to the church. I'm like, hey guys, the people who are serving you, they do have to work. And that money's not going to fly out of the sky, and so I think that that's always a interesting topic, and I always try to challenge it as much of like, one, you should be obedient to God.
Yeah.
You talk about transparency, and it's like, well, hey, the Bible doesn't say tithe, and then if I see all the money and what's going on, now we still need to be, then I'll give it.
Yeah.
It says tithe and do that unto you. And so I think that's a really, really good answer. Why do you think most people, let's say in ministry as a whole, feel called to ministry, and then there's sometimes maybe a time where it's like, hey, and I'm saying this from the Earners Academy position with pastors I've worked with in other states or other areas, that there's still like a pull between like, hey, I want to keep doing this, I want to keep serving here, but I still want to also like make sure that my family is taken care of. Whereas like a lot of pastors that I know have side gigs or side hustles or things that they do because they have a lot of giftings.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess you say, why do you think that some that feel called feel like, hey, I want to still do this, but I also still want to do some other things on the side as well? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We just ran through like I think a breakdown that I think helps a lot of people. First of all, when it responds to like full-time vocational ministry, right? And that's like purpose, calling, and assignment, right? Like we've been talking about this a lot. And my purpose is always going to be to know God, to make him known. And so like if you're on here, you're a believer, you know what I mean? Or you're not a believer, can I tell you God's purpose for your life is to first find him, know him, and then make him known in your process. So I think that's baseline. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, here's your purpose, right? Then calling are you these unique gifting, skill sets, things like where he says, like, I knew you in your mother's womb, I formed you, I fashioned you. So these callings that are on our life are our unique thumbprint and our expression of how we express purpose. And then I think like, assignment is more like how we do it, where we do it. Is it a church? Is it at a job? Is it, what I mean? Like, what am I doing in that season? Assignment is temporary to fulfill like an external purpose, right? The minute I get any three of those twisted, it gets really, really confusing. I become frustrated with God. And so I think that's what I would say to someone, like, first of all, in ministry is like, do your giftings kind of fit in a church so you think you're there, or are you giving your life to the local church and you're saying it's vocational? Because I think that's a different calling.
Two totally different
things. And I think my former senior pastor used to say it this way. He's like, if you can do anything else except for ministry, go do it, right? Because the struggle, the spiritual warfare, the things that are attached around it. But if you're called to, if your assignment, recircle back. If your assignment is ministry, it'll be the only thing you can do. And so I think that's first thing that you have to like identify and answer is yourself. Because I think there's a lot of people, if I'm being honest, that are in ministry that aren't assigned to ministry. I'm going to kind of put a damper in there real quick for some people. And then I think there's people that the Lord's asked in faith to be assigned to ministry and they're still sitting on it and they're miserable. So I think that's, first of all, like, I guess a tension you have to answer. And then when you get into ministry, right, you obviously understand maybe the actual goal of serving the local church isn't going to be 6 figures, right? Whatever. Like, I think like that side of it may not be, but that's why I think God does give you creative and witty ideas. He gives you inventions. He gives you business plans. He gives you skill sets to grow people around you, to get into people's lives and to use what's in your hands. And I think that's the side of like stewardship that we talk about. Like, we want to talk about stewardship like it's just tithing, but it's also like the giftings that he's given you, the skill sets that he's given you. Can you develop them? Can you put them to play? Like, can you work with what's in your hand? I think this is a beautiful example, like the parable of the talents, right? He's like, man, to one he gave one, to one he gave three, to one he gave five, and the one that gives five, he multiplies them, he puts them to use. And so he says, well done, good and faithful, that one. The one that buries it, doesn't do anything with it, he's like, yo, you're wicked and lazy. And I think a lot of times in the church, we have more talents and more things to give, and we bury them, and I think that's where that tension becomes between faith, finances, what am I doing? How am I working with what God's given me? Am I being a good steward?
And I think that most feel like, obviously, ministry can be a very broad term, right? Because like some think, oh, well, it's only in the four walls of a church. Like, and I think even I would say at one point I thought that's what it was. And then I realized, okay, hey, we have a business.
I remember we had a conversation about that.
We had a conversation because I'm like, look, I have this big conviction, not necessarily about, it wasn't really about money. It was
Yeah.
more so about the impact that I felt like money could have on my church,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I was like, hey, I have these gifts that I think would be good, but I don't know what they really look like in a church. But if I went into, let's say, corporate and started a business, like I was really passionate about, well, hey, if I go make $1 million or $10 million, you know what I'm more excited about? If I'm making $10 million, I can give $1 million to my church
Yep.
and not have to sleep. I mean, I can sleep at, not necessarily sleep at night, but I'm really happy about doing that.
Yeah.
And so I know that people feel like, oh, well, I have to work at a church to be in ministry.
Yeah.
But I think now seeing, the Earners Academy and mission, seeing that like we're actually still doing it
Yeah.
in a different way. It's just
100%.
finances. It's
100%.
not, oh, well, hey, I don't have to, not that I don't want to work for a church, but I'm realizing there's other ways that you can still do ministry outside of it.
Absolutely. And I remember like that conversation just to encourage someone that's out there that maybe feels that tug between assignment and calling and what does that look like, and I'm pushing for vocational ministry. I remember having a conversation, be like, Cameron, you're reaching people that I'll never get in the same room
Yeah.
with. And why wouldn't God carry you into that space where like no one else can get in
Right.
the room, and you're continuing to do it? So I think it's just a cool testimony of like sometimes we're wishing for someone else's calling, or we're
Right.
wishing for someone else's assignment, and it's like, bro, just walk in yours and
Right.
stop wanting or desiring to be at a church, right? Or to be only in these like nonprofits or whatever sector
In a
you
box,
think
basically.
that, do not box God in. He can
Yeah.
do anything. And I mean, you're a byproduct of what not boxing God looks like, you know?
Now, we were having a boxing match.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I was not
absolutely,
winning.
absolutely,
I was not
absolutely.
winning it at all. So I think it's always been, to hear people talk about it now, and I see people. It's like, well, you hear so many crazy things like, oh, well, I think I told you one of the stupid things I heard somebody say was like, yeah, man, well, God doesn't want people to make a lot of money because then you can't depend on them. And I'm like, yeah, honestly, truly, I'm going to say this. People that I know who are very wealthy, who have a relationship, they always say like, hey, honestly, the more I've made, the more I have to depend because I'm in such uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And, as much as I want to call my pastor, my pastor's never made $1 billion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He can pray for me
Yeah.
all day, but like when I got to make decisions, if I'm going to do this, the only person who can answer that is God.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where people think like, well, if I get out of this, certain income, which I think is really dumb, if I quite ask.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we serve an abundant God, so why would you not think that those things are going to continue to grow in your life? Man, great. You got some good answers here. Hey, before we keep going though, if you have been watching the channel, I want to say make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you can get more financial content just like this. And also we can keep tapping in with Tim here. So take us through your journey into ministry. So from the starting point and how your role as executive pastor, AKA Robin is what we were calling it before, has given you a unique view of finances, both on the ground level and then maybe even like, behind the scenes per se.
Yeah. I mean, I think I for those that do know my story, don't know my story, I was in college, great GPA, great ACT, kind of put me in a place to get some academic help, some financial help to go to school. Really didn't have purpose behind it, didn't have direction, meaning behind it. So obviously when you don't have vision, the Bible says the people perish, right? So really quickly kind of became a Kanye West college dropout, you know what I'm saying? So that happened. And honestly, in my lowest of lows, I had just lost a job. I had just kind of like lost my scholarship. And I was like, God, what are you doing in my life? I ended up finding God in a really unique way and ended up going to ministry school. I originally said like, hey, God, I'm gonna give you 9 months of my life, get me straight so I can go make the 6 figures and find the wife and 2.5 kids, white picket fence, like that high note. Like I told him.
2.5 kids.
Yeah. It's the average, right? It's like the US average. You gotta have 2.5. Or we could just like go to that,
Is that 2 and a dog?
Yeah, the why Solomon story. Someone gets the half. I don't know. We can split hairs on that one, but I think I just went that route. Like, hey God, I'm gonna give you this, and then you give me back my plan. I think the funny thing is, as I gave him a portion of it, obviously he knew what he could get more from me, and it just continued to be that place where it's like, can surrender, and yeah, man. I think I said I'd do one. Figured I'd do some leadership because I was already there. Figured I might as well get my ministerial license since I was already there. And by the end of it, I just kept giving God my yes. And so to be honest, I didn't have this like trajectory or plan to like be an executive pastor or be in youth ministry for 10 plus years or be like, none of that was on my radar. It was literally an obedient step and a yes to God and what he was asking. And so I would first of all say that to anybody that's asking in the tension of like work, life, calling, money. First of all, what's God asking of you? Go be obedient.
Yeah.
Sometimes the simple things are the hardest things in life. And so I think that kind of morphed my role. And then once again, getting back to some of those skill sets and things that were always in your heart that you just never knew. Oh, wait, I actually have a passion to build leaders. I actually have a passion to do these things. I actually have a passion to communicate. I actually have a passion to organize and restructure things and get the best like productivity out of a team and just things that you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I never knew this was there. And I think as you uncover those gifts, then obviously the price tag kind of goes up a little bit, right? It's just like anything in life. It's like if you continue to develop, then your worth goes up. You know what I mean? And so I think when you're saying yes, I think that's probably the hardest part about ministry is like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna do ministry, I'm gonna make this. It's like, you don't have a skill set yet. No, you're not proven. And so I think like you have to jump in the fire and know that like, hey, my dollar amount probably isn't worth what it is, but as that continues to grow and as you continue to prove, then I think the church does sometimes struggle with honest conversations about what maybe my worth is and where I can go. If you were in a real career, they tell you like get a new job every 3 years because your value is going to continue to go up outside an organization. Whereas like churches would say like, no, loyalty is a higher priority, right? So it's like, where is that conversation? It does get a little, a little sticky. I think sometimes with staffs, transparency, where you can be. I hear across, churches across America, talking to different pastors, talking to different senior leaders, like what's this line between running corporate and running a faith-based organization? Right. And I think we are an organization that has morals and integrity at the core of who we are, and that we will take steps of faith sometimes that are beyond. And sometimes our jobs require those steps of faith. Hey, if you'll stick this out, that God is your provider and he's going to give a skill set or a side hustle or something like that to kind of mind the gap. And then other times it's like, hey, no, you're worth this. And we see that you're worth this. And we need to have an honest conversation about.
And I think that
there's an area to grow.
It's one, I commend you for, you talk about your journey doing this for a long period of time. And, I commend you a lot. For those who are watching, Pastor Tim is a great communicator. So I'll get a link to the sermon that y'all can check out. But one of the things that I do commend about pastors, right, and especially being in corporate for a long time, obviously you know how to build an organization, right? Build an organization really well. You can communicate really well. But to stay in something for 20 years to me is very honorable, because if you were to, I know there's like, maybe if let's say we're getting even deeper here. I would say there are pastors that I've talked to that's like, yeah, well, if I just take this skill and go to corporate, I can make $200,000 or $300,000 versus like goes back to the calling, right? Like, hey, that's great. But am I going to actually be fulfilled in doing that, right? Yeah. Like I've told people this all the time. Just because you make more money doesn't necessarily mean you're happy doing it. Yeah. And when you think about, all the friends that I have that are in ministry, like they genuinely love what they do. Yeah. And it's not really, the money's cool, but it's like, hey, I love seeing people being impacted every day. Because I think me and you have joked about this. I've asked senior pastors about this. It's like, hey, I'm still trying to understand finances in church because like the metrics are different, right? It's not like, in my world, it's revenue and it's like, okay, hey, we have more customers, we can pay more people. Church, it's like, I still don't know to this day, like, how do you base the worth of like a raise? Like, is it how many people you lead to Christ? Is it, are you duplicating? Like, those are real questions I ask myself because I'm like, hey, I want to understand this. Yeah. I'm not asking you to answer it, but I'm just saying these are questions I have in my head of like, hey, I would love to learn more about how these decisions, because I imagine they're not easy. But it's like, you got the person who is hustling, like they're sweeping, they're doing all the things that nobody sees. And then they come in and say, well, hey, I feel like I want more money. And it's like, whoa, like what's the metric? Whereas like if I had an employee that was like, all right, Cam, we're producing X. Yeah. I'm helping you produce X. I feel like I deserve more. It's like, okay, that's justifiable, right? So
Yeah.
that's always been an interesting tension
Absolutely.
when it comes to church and money and trying to figure out, well, how are those decisions made? What are they based on? I mean, if you have thoughts on just like your experience from other churches or senior pastors, like that's always something that I've like
Yeah.
been curious about.
Yeah, no, first, thank God my role isn't CFO,
Yeah.
right? Like when it comes to this side, right? Like, and I'm not making those decisions. I think that that's a really hard line. Like, obviously, what payroll is a real thing, right?
Yeah.
Like for a church, it's like, man, how much percentage of your company is in payroll? Is that 50%? Is that 30%? Is that 60%? Based on your organization, you got to kind of set that line. I think standardized line is about 50% if I'm still accurate on some of those. And so, yeah, man, like when your net operating is 50% in payroll, how does that go up or go down? How much does every person hold and steward? Have some churches that are like next gen ministries, and so one guy oversees from 6 weeks old to 18 years old. You have other churches, the larger they grow, it's like, no, we actually need 3 or 4 people for that. And then like the other side of it is like, even like the church is built with beautiful culture of volunteers, servant leaders. Like no church can accomplish what they do without servant leaders, people giving back to the church. And here's the beautiful thing is God says that as you build his house, he will build your life, right? So there's a unique tension and calling to just build the church and not receive a dollar, right? So it's like, so where is that when it's my reasonable service and then it becomes occupation?
Yeah.
And I think that's the line that maybe we need to have better conversations about, clarity about, even understanding what maybe, like, are there caps in certain roles, right? Do next gen roles cap out at certain things? Do serving and being the we would call it like the chair pastor back in the day, right? They just get everything done behind the scenes. They move the chairs, they clean out the rooms. Like they're the ones you don't see, but they hold a vital role at staff, especially a big church that has so many moving parts,
Right.
And so I think I've seen a ton of structures. Like I said, I don't envy you CFOs as far as like making those decisions. When do people go up? What is the cap? What time does our church need middle management? Is a lead team or an executive team even important to the structure? What things are hired first? Different organizations play it by different standards, right? So you would say like, oh, well, first we got to have a senior pastor, right? But then what's next? Is it a worship pastor? Is it a children's pastor? Metrics in America would tell you like children's ministry is the next driving thing that makes your church vital if you're going to attract young families. And so I think that's the tension is like there are metrics and there are great data out there to analyze. And then there's also like following the prompting of the Lord. And so I think that's where things get sticky between like faith and I think we do need to have clear systems, because if there aren't systems and if there aren't boundaries, here's what I would say to just like I grew up Pentecostal. I love my Pentecostal church. I think this is where we would say, oh, the Holy Spirit will just show up. And I think sometimes that's a lazy excuse on us poor planning, right? The Bible says like to make a plan and he's going to guide our steps, right? Like everything in the word of God tells me, like Habakkuk 2:2 tells me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, right? There's so many scriptures in Proverbs that tells me as a man plans, then the Lord determines his steps. So there's so many things that I think if we're not careful, we get lazy when it comes to that. Where's the dollar? Where's the transparency? Where's the goal? Where are we headed? What can you expect?
Yeah.
Which helps people either level up or transition or say, you know what, if I can't make more than that, maybe this isn't the place for me. But that's going to be a decision they're going to then have to wrestle out between expectation and faith.
Right.
Am I called here or do I expect more and I have to move on? And I think that helps people almost pray like, hey, God, this is what you're doing. If this is the line, then I need to pray into this.
Yeah.
So
it's it's funny because I feel like we were maybe drinking coffee or something, and I was talking about the parallel between like the one that comes to mind a lot is like college football, like because a GA, right? I think about when you said you started ministry school, like a GA puts in all this work and makes nothing. But you stay the course, you stay faithful. As your coach grows, as the organization grows, those things happen. But even then, there's still not really a metric for like a grad assistant. Hey, how many jerseys did you clean today? Or it's kind of like not quantifiable. It's just like more of a kind of like a prey and like, okay, hey, I think this guy is worth X.
Yeah.
So it's always like interesting because we were just talking about this a few weeks ago about how like people would not think of football or leadership and like
Yeah.
church as the
Yeah.
same. But even then, it's still like these are some things that I thought about as a parallel of like, okay, hey, if I'm a GA or I'm a volunteer in this
Yeah.
case, like
Yeah.
I know plenty of guys who started as just volunteers in organizations like football organizations that have slowly grown or they've
Yeah.
gone with the coach
Yeah.
or whatever. And so those things they're really, really interesting to look at as a parallel. But you did give me a little bit more clarity. If you are a CFO, shout out to you. I would
Shout out
never
to
do your
CFOs.
job.
Yes.
Would
Yeah. Yeah.
never do your job. There's normally we talk about money, we talked a little bit about ministry.
Hmm.
Why do you feel like there's normally like tension between church and finances? Specifically like the conversation from like the pulpit. Like pastors don't really
Hmm.
normally are kind of like not I would commend my senior pastor, but most
Yes.
probably are
Yeah.
not gonna talk about it as much. Like, do you feel like that is a why do you feel like most pastors struggle with navigating having that conversation?
I mean, I think like anything, it's like you're coming up someone's block, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? Isn't that the term, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm a park on your street,
Yeah.
whatever. I think you're getting into maybe a portion of people's life that feels very personal, right? I think that's the side finances feel extremely personal. Like if we were going to take like the top three things, it's probably going to be like relationships, finances, and then probably I'd go back to calling,
Hmm.
like what am I actually doing? And so those three things feel really personal. So that makes it tough. I think, unfortunately, with some of maybe as quickly as social media throws out the one church's mishap, which I want to double down on that for every one church that misappropriates funds, there are thousands of churches that are doing right and
Yeah.
stewarding God's money well and being integritous. Like so, like that's the other side that sucks is the only one makes the headline that fails.
It's like
Um,
generalizing all of.
it's like okay, it's all churches. I knew it. You know what I mean? I knew it, and so we conspiracy theory that. But I think when that stuff happens and when it comes to light, it makes us like not
Hmm.
trust. Like okay, and I think that tension is always gonna be in our life between trusting men and trusting the Lord,
Hmm.
right? And it's like we don't put our hope and our trust in the Lord. I mean, in men, but in the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like that really it all just gets really really
Yeah.
sticky. And so I don't know. I would say for most senior pastors too, like how do we teach people how to tithe?
Hmm.
How do we teach people generosity? Like maybe we've gotten away from biblical standards on what that looks like. Maybe we just jump into
Yeah.
generalizations of like, oh, we have a culture of generosity. Well, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Where does it go? How do I help people give? So I think there's a lot to be unpacked there. And once again, don't envy any senior pastor on that side of things.
Yeah.
But I think we have to have these hard conversations because at the end of the day, these are people's habits, they're people's mindsets,
Yeah.
beliefs about money, right? Sometimes it's spiritual and
Hmm.
sometimes it's practical. Sometimes it's I just spend money bad. Like I have bad spending habits.
Yeah.
And so to get up from a pulpit and generalize all of that when it feels very personal, I think is probably the
Yeah.
tension.
Do you think shameless plug here for Mission 310, but do
Yeah.
you think
Trying to
that
like alley oop,
yeah, you know. But
Yeah.
I think, do you think the approach of, trying to get like an outside party to talk about it has helped? Like I know in our experience for working with churches, we're kind of like the person that like we host the class, we
Mhm.
host it live, and there's people there, and then there's other churches that stream in. But like I'm an outside person because I'm not the senior pastor, so I'm kind
Yeah.
of getting a
Yeah.
lot of the real, like you said, if I'm parking on your street, you're gonna walk up to my
You're gonna
car
walk up to your
versus your
house.
pastor because it's
Yep.
like, well, hey, let me tell you about this because maybe there's like this tension of like Cameron or his organization doesn't really need anything from me, and I don't think that the pastor is looking at it that way, but they may think in their mind, if I
Mhm.
tell my pastor, hey, I'm struggling with this, their initial reaction is going to be, well, hey, you just got to tithe more. I don't think that all pastors operate that way,
No.
but I'm just saying that, you get on these, like you said, there may be a pastor, one pastor that says, hey, use your credit card to tithe to the church. And like, then it generalizes all churches. That's like, they're just after my money. Like,
Yeah.
that's just all I want.
Yeah.
So do you think a better approach is for, yes, you can talk about it, but hey, we're going to offer this resource to be able to help you.
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think it's both and. I think that as a senior pastor, like you can't steer away from the hard conversations. Thank God our senior pastor doesn't, right? So I think we do have to have, um,
And how deep should that go is a better question, because it can
yeah,
be very like 40,000 foot view about finance. And
yeah,
then like it doesn't, I think, senior pastor of my church, I think he does a good job of making it practical. Like,
yes,
hey, I'm not, yes, we can talk about the story of the parable of the talents.
yep.
That is great. But let's like,
Let's lock in.
really get
Let's talk
down.
about you.
Yes, like that's great. Hey, I know if I had 5 talents, I need to find a way to get it to 10. Like
Yes.
that is great. But I
Yeah.
think do you think that the approach is maybe is that lack of knowledge, or like a pastor doesn't want to take that strong of a position?
Yeah, bro, I think it's once again both. I know it sounds like an easy cop out, but I think it can be. I think some are maybe preaching and asking the Lord the same questions,
Hmm.
and finding. I mean, I could honestly say there's seasons where I preach faithfulness and preach this, and I'm like, all right, God, you
I
gonna
need
have
that
to come
too.
through this month. I'm in faith right now, right? So they're like, I think there are seasons where you're preaching to yourself.
Yeah.
And so maybe that is a little bit of tension. And then the practicality of maybe you just don't know how to do it and haven't taken the time to slow down and actually learn that skill set, whether that be budgeting, finances, investment, whatever that gap is that you currently don't have.
Hmm.
And I think that's where like Mission 310 comes in a great space where it's like, hey, let the pastor do like the heavy lifting, and then like behind scenes, let's build this skill set. Let's work through the actual numbers. I do think having a third party sometimes helps, right? Like if I'm going to the senior pastor or even sometimes my leader and being like, yeah, I'm bad and here's my spending habits. Like it's like a black mark on my name, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? You know what I'm saying? And I think unfortunately, I wish it wasn't this way because like that's how we grow in the church is
Yeah.
being able to admit our faults, being able, like James says, confess your sins to one
Right.
another, find healing in that process. We got to be more transparent. I think the reason why we get in these problems is because we didn't tell anybody and swiped a credit card to appear something that we're not, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where we get in sticky situations. So I think there's a lot of unpacking, and I think finances are spiritual and
Yeah.
they're practical, and that's the hard part. I think when we started this conversation, we talked through faith and finances. Why is it so hard? Is because the Bible says that where your treasure is, there your
Hmm.
heart will be, and it's so hard to dislocate those two things, right? It's like you can't dislocate your heart and the dollar, but the minute you start to realize that your finances are just a resource and just a position of my heart, I think that's
Hmm.
that's where we start to find healing in the right perspective and the right place. And then let's start. Like I know that's
Yeah.
probably scary, and we're talking here today, man. If you've been afraid to start and whatever that looks like, man, start today.
And I've seen it, like I think what was probably a big hard position when we started Mission was, I would always, when I would talk to pastors, they would say like, yeah, we've got people coming up and like asking for money and we want help. and
Yeah.
and I think that that's good. Like, hey, because the church has a good heart for giving, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, hey, we have this guy we really want to help, but we're just giving them fish. We're not really
Come
teaching
on.
them
Come
how
on.
to fish. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Now, let's say you're a pastor and you're saying, hey, we've got this member. We're trying to help them. We pay for their light bill this year, right? Like that's a big thing. We pay
Big
for their
thing.
light bill. But what about next month? Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, hey, are we going to teach them how to actually prepare for their light bill, which is going to come back next month?
Yeah.
And so I think that was like a big heart behind us wanting to partner with churches, was like, hey, we want to actually equip these people
Yeah.
to where they can at least move from, being in a place where move from not having any money to having margin to being able to help in tithe
Yeah.
and be happy about doing it. I know when it comes to tithe, most of the time I've said in most clients I've worked with, I never really even have to talk about giving because they already know what's up. Like I don't really have to say much, because once we help them actually build a system and once we help them actually get out of debt, they just naturally do it. Because I think humans are naturally givers, but especially believers on top of that is like,
Absolutely.
no, we want to give, whether that's our time or
Yeah.
resources.
Yep.
That's just what we want to do.
Yeah.
We want to serve. So I think this was a good segue. to my next question. Why do you think, which we somewhat answered this, why do you think the church hasn't always been at the forefront of teaching financial literacy to its congregation? Kind of answered that already.
Yeah.
But another one would be, what would you say that financial health as a whole, like in ministry, looks like for most like ministry people in ministry, and how do they counsel people? How are those people being counseled that are in that space?
I think every church is probably making its own approach. For
Mm-hmm.
us, we do Mission 310, you know.
You should too.
Another side plug again. I think, there's been ways to kind of get around the practicalities of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so like we've got, honestly, at the end of the day, we've got to have a better conversation. You know what I mean? If we're going to be the church, we should be excellent in everything we do. I think we started off in the beginning of it and you're like, God doesn't want people to be rich, or God
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want people to be moneyed, or whatever, like that saying is like, look, you should be in
Yeah.
poverty because then you have to trust him, or like whatever. That's crazy. I
Yeah.
think I think God wants me to influence in everything I do. He wants me to be the best and be an excellent. And are there seasons, like I said, where it's tough? But yeah, but it's tough because I'm needing 5 million to do the next project, not $20 to get Taco Bell, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like that's the difference of seasons that grow through faith and through dollars. So I think that's the hard part.
Let me ask a deeper question here. Do you feel like people have shame or have fear if they're in ministry to ask for raises, because it's like, well, hey, I'm doing this for the glory of the Lord, but I feel like I'm doing a lot, and I feel like I'm
Yeah.
working. What would be? Do you feel like people have that? And the second part of that question is, what would you say to somebody who is? I don't like to use the word hustle, but they're just working really hard. They feel like
Mhm.
they're proving their value in the organization. Do you feel like there's shame? There are a lot of people in ministry who deal with the shame of asking for more. And
Mhm.
then what would you say to that person if you were pastoring them actually through the situation?
Yeah. I absolutely think there's shame attached. I think there's doubts, there's insecurities. Am I worth this much? Like, does the organization see me? I think it's no different at that point of working any job, right? It's like, man, I've been doing this, I've been proving myself. Does the company see my value? If the dollars don't match what I think, then like, is my value apparent to them? What can I do? I think that's where we talked about earlier of just like, do we have clear lines of like, do certain positions have caps? Like, is there a pay scale for this? Can I go up? What does it look like to be here at this organization beyond this? Can I grow into, like even me, where I kept saying yes, yes, yes. I never saw myself in this seat, but God saw me in this seat. And so, like, but could we have charted here quicker or with more clarity?
Mm-hmm.
Like what does that look like? And I think we can have bigger conversations like
Mm-hmm.
that as the church as a whole, not just specific churches, but like the church as a whole can probably have better conversations. I think I would tell anybody who's working in ministry, um, I think you should always feel whoever your lead team is or your direct report, as we would say,
Yeah.
right? I think you should feel free to have that conversation. I don't think that they're going to frown on that line of what does this look like? Where am I at? What value do I hold? What metrics does the company value? Because I think that's another thing true is every church holds its own value system, right? So for some, they may say, well, until you get 150 kids in this kids ministry, or until you get this, and then some numbers are driven by church growth and not just like, oh, you're a great leader, right? If the church grows, kids ministry is going to grow. So that doesn't mean you're a great kids leader. It just
Yeah.
means like more families are showing up, right? Like, so there's just so many different metrics that we can kind of pick apart to see what we value. And so I think that's the other side is like the organization has to have answers to what it
Yeah.
values and where it's going to put those dollars and so forth. So once again, really, really technical. Like it's a lot of ministry balance, vision. But I think I would just say to every person that's in ministry is please, please, please don't feel shame.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid. And don't, here's the biggest thing I would honestly say. Don't feel like the desire to want more in life is like the devil,
Yeah.
right? Like I think that's the thing I thought when I was younger is like to want more, to do more, to influence more, to take care of my family more. Like it kind of can feel like, oh, you shouldn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
The church holds a weird tension there, I think sometimes. And I think, man, the more generous, the better I can be, the more I can show my family what it looks like to serve God and that He's a God that knows no lack.
Yeah.
I think that's the place that I want to be.
Yeah. And what prompted the question was I have clients that are at other churches and other states, and like I'll see their stuff, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I've been at this church for 15 like
Mm,
years or 10 years," and there hasn't been a conversation. I'm scared to ask, and so that's why I was curious to kind of hear. It felt like it was fear of like if I ask now, I'm
mm,
now I'm greedy. Like now
mhm,
I'm not getting. I want
mhm.
more, and so to hear you say like, "Hey, it's okay
Yeah,
to want to ask,"
yeah, yeah,
especially if like you're helping the organization grow and you're playing a role. Now, if you're in ministry and you're just not doing anything,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's two sides of the
Yeah.
coin.
Or
Like,
you're 3 months in, and you're like, "Hey, man, I'm doing a lot." You're like,
yeah, I went
what,
from 10 to
what have you
30
even
kids.
built? Yeah,
Now,
what have you even built so far? So, once again, it's a very all these things have such nuance to them, and
yeah,
that's why we stay away from them, right? Because it's like when you say faith and finances, like it's like, oh, well, that's and so we stay away. And I think this is what we have to do. We have to get in it and have conversations and hold ourselves accountable as church and as people, like
yeah,
as followers of Christ. Like, yeah, you want more, but you're not stewarding what you have well. And then also like, hey, as an organization, can you be clear about what does it look like to steward here? And how can I grow in that role to prove worth?
hey, man, you hit it on the head. So you heard it here first. I wasn't. I'm not the pastor, so I'm gonna stay out of this one. Last question before I let you go for your birthday. For someone in ministry who loves what they do, but maybe they're saying like, "Hey, I'm quietly struggling financially," what would you say is your word of encouragement and practical advice for them going forward?
Yeah. Let's go back Bible and where we started. First of
Where we
all,
should always start.
what's he saying? Like what do you feel like the Lord's saying? Being obedient to what he said. I think there's seasons where he says go, there's seasons where he says wait, there's seasons where he says sit, right? There's season where he's saying trust me. There's season where he's saying go get the side job, go get the side hustle. So I think obedience is the first thing. What's he actually asking you to do, right? And so from there, then I can base everything other decision that I'm going to make from that point. The other side is like what's in my hand. um, I think time and time as I look in the Bible, he always uses what's already in your hand
Mm-hmm.
to glorify him. So begin to ask the Lord, what's in my hand? What can I make a dollar off of? Where can I expand my influence? Are you already given me that I've maybe been sitting on
Mm-hmm.
to be faithful with, to begin to cultivate maybe more finances, more income, more influence, which are going to lead to dollars and financial freedom. So I think between those two things of like obedience and stewardship are probably going to be the basis. The third thing I would say is stop making decisions in a vacuum. Like a lot of times people are silently suffering. And maybe it's just you and your wife going through this thing and you're just like on hardship and no one else knows. No one else, you haven't opened your life to other people. The Bible says there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the last side of it is like, man, if you feel absolutely stuck, it's like get help, get people around you that can see beyond you. I say this another one like I like continue going,
Keep
but
going.
like another one is like culture. Like if you're around nothing but broke people, like maybe you got it. Like maybe wealthy things don't grow around broke environments. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And so I think sometimes you got to level up your faith. You got to get around people like single people stay single because they don't know what it looks like to be healthily married, right? Like you got to get around some people where you can admire their marriage. You got to get around some people where you say, man, I now because I see it, I have faith for that. And so I think that's the other thing is we can stay comfortable in our environments because we're there and wish in one hand
Mm-hmm.
that we could be there, but the other side is like, man, level up your experience. Get around a culture in which finances grow. Get around a culture in which people don't go out and waste their paycheck every weekend. Get around like you know what I mean, where like the normal is to cut and save and say no, 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 it's because I'm going somewhere. I
Right.
have a vision for my life. We do hard things. So yeah, I think that's like four things: obedience, stewardship, I think culture, and then there's
Yeah.
probably one more.
I
Yeah.
think I know we were going to end on there. I think you said something
No.
I want to kind of circle back on. Just when I hear you say like, and I know a lot of people in ministry, right? They have, gifts, right? Whether it's,
Yeah.
let's say they're really creative and they can, do really well with photography, videography. My challenge has always been like, hey, if this is a gift that you're also using in the church, this has always been, and I say this has been my like conviction for myself, but also I will tell people like, are you doing everything? Are you giving everything that you have with the gift that you have? Like, yes, you're in one place, like you're in the church, but does that not mean that the gift that you have won't impact people outside the church that you
Absolutely.
can't give to it,
Absolutely.
right? And so I think when you said that, it really made me think like, hey, if you have a gift and you're saying, hey, I want you to put that thing on the potter wheel and just keep getting it better every single time and using it for other people outside of church. And there, once again, back to what Tim was saying, get around an environment of other entrepreneurs who may
Yeah.
say, hey,
Yeah.
I know you're doing this, and don't leave the church now. This is not what I'm saying. Do
No.
not leave just
No.
because I'm saying this. Because a lot of people will get one check.
Yeah.
Wait, I can go start a business. Not saying that you shouldn't. But what I'm saying is you can still do both
Yeah.
healthily and still be fine. I think that's a word, healthily. More healthy, however
More
we want to go
healthy.
about it. I'm here to
Healthier.
talk about money, not
Healthier.
spelling
Yeah.
in words. But if that is you and you're saying, hey, I'm on both sides, like I'm in Tim's role and I want to be in ministry, but I also want to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
there's a way that you can still manage both and still do both well.
Yeah.
So, hey, I
Yeah.
want to say thanks.
No,
Appreciate you.
absolutely.
As
I appreciate
always,
you.
if you tuned into the channel, hey, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you share it with all your friends, all your pastors, all the people, so you can check out this. And if you're wondering what the heck Mission 310 is, and if you're a pastor wanting to figure out how we can help, go to mission310.info. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to check out these. We'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.